Wow, Portsmouth. I don't know where to stand because this light is very bright. This is crazy and exciting, and I'm a little nervous. So I've worked in advertising for about 6 years. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. I've worked in advertising for about 6 years. My work lives primarily in the public space, and it is consumed mostly by complete strangers. So whether it's my blog or a billboard or a commercial, I generally am not super in tune to who's actually consuming my work, but I know a lot of you. So this is a different new territory for me. And I'm, per the topic, going beyond my own comfort zone here and stepping into a space that is a little uncomfortable and awkward for me. So we're gonna do this together and it's gonna be awesome. So honesty is the only policy. Fast Company did a study where they polled 12,000 people and asked them, what do you look for in a brand? When you connect with a brand out in the world, out in the wild, what do you look for? And these were the most popular answers that came through. A brand that faces whatever challenges are encountered, a brand that stays true to its mission and values, a brand that is willing to show its flaws in order to show where it needs work, a company that owns up to their mistakes and is honest with its customers, and a brand that doesn't sugarcoat anything or sweep problems under the rug. And while we are not actually going to be talking about advertising today, I thought this was a really nice segue because while we are so willing to ask for these things from the brands that we connect with on a daily basis, we oftentimes don't require or request these things from ourselves. You know, staying true to our own mission and values, facing the challenges that are encountered, not sugarcoating things or sweeping problems under the rug. So we're actually going to kick this off with an activity. You all hopefully came in with a piece of paper, yes? So if you tucked your paper into your purse or threw it away, that's a bummer. But if you could take it out. So we're just going to take a minute. We're going to take just a minute and jot down a life experience that you're either having trouble acknowledging, confronting, overcoming, or sharing openly. We're not going to be sharing these with our neighbors or doing that awkward thing where I pick a random person to share your truths. So this can be anything. This can be anything from a fight you had with someone to something traumatic that maybe happened in your childhood. This can be something that happened at work, something that happened in your personal life, in a relationship. This can be anything. This is your time. We're not going to be sharing these. I'm not going to be putting anyone on the spot. I just want you to think about what is a life experience that you're having trouble acknowledging, confronting, or overcoming, and sharing. And just while you guys are finishing up, this isn't a rhetorical question. I'm actually asking the audience here. What stops us from sharing our truths? Just shout things out.
Embarrassment, vulnerability,
shame, fear, judgment, hurting someone else's feelings. What else? Guilt, regret. That's a big one. Judgment, confrontation. That one's awesome. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we don't know how, right? Maybe we haven't figured out how we want to share our truths yet. Any last lingering? Pride. That's a good one. Oftentimes, the common thread is that other people will think X. Other people will think I'm crazy. Other people will think I'm being selfish. We worry so often about what other people will think that it actually prevents us from stepping into our own light and sharing our own truths with the world. Other people will think I'm full of myself. I've thought this so many times. I have a blog called The Renegade Rulebook, and I publish largely personal stories and anecdotes. And oftentimes, before I hit publish, one of the first things that pops into my mind is, will other people think that I'm conceited for saying this? Or will other people think that I'm selfish? Or will they not be able to relate? Or will they think that I'm not telling the truth? If you know me, you know that this is like very on brand for who I am as a person. But not that F word. This one. Fear. Fear is a dirty word. Fear will drag us to the edge of our own comfort zone. And when we're approaching those edges, what do? We dig in our heels. We're like, no, not that. But that's actually usually around the time that we need to just take one step. When we find ourselves in moments where we're like, ugh, those are actually the most critical moments for us to step forward. And the pro tip here is that's all it takes, is one step. Reaching your biggest breakthroughs don't always come from like jumping out of an airplane or like eating, praying, and loving around Italy. I mean, maybe they do. That's cool if you can do that. But sometimes it just comes with saying the thing out loud, taking one step beyond where we're at. So here are a few very personal stories that I personally have written and some struggles that I've shared both in native and digital advertising, but also just on my own blog and with my own community. Making the wrong career move 4 times. It took me 29 years to become a writer, but career-wise, it took me 6 years to become a writer. I worked in production, I worked in content, I worked in PR, I worked in strategy, and these were all very wrong for me. But they got me to where I am now. Quitting my job to become a writer. The only thing that is scarier to me than becoming a writer was actually like saying that I was one. Because then there's accountability. Then if I fail, people know. And that's scary. That's usually the thing that's like, but what if people find out? Like I can do it on my own secretly, like freelance on the side hustle style, and nobody's gonna know. But if I actually like it's on my LinkedIn and people can see it, then it's real. That time my brother died. It's like a really dark Friends episode. The one where the brother dies. Failing at stuff. Failing at a lot of stuff. Conquering self-doubt. And all of this other stuff. A lot of stuff to choose from here. The love abyss. Also the dating app abyss. Dating's my favorite thing to write about, actually. Because it's like the most awkward thing to write about. Being alone, ending shitty friendships. This one's really hard the older you get. Like my late 20s have been filled with ending shitty friendships. Scars, personal growth, infidelity, career burnout. These are really touchy subjects, but they're also things that, raise your hand if one of these things is either something on your paper or if there's something on here that you've been through that you didn't put down but that was difficult. Just a show of hands. Wow, look around. That's literally everyone. That's wild. We tend to think that our personal truths are so unique to us, and they are. They're special and unique, but they're also universal. Think about any song that you've ever connected to, where you're like, oh my God, those words, it's like my life. It was written for me. Like it wasn't. Like it wasn't written for you. I mean, unless you're Ed Sheeran, and then I assume all your songs were probably written for me. But they were just written for like the mass, you know, because they're universal topics. These are things that like we all deal with. And they're scary, uncomfortable for most of us. So struggle is universal. Struggle is a thing that everyone experiences. And it's super uncomfortable. It's icky. Like when you're going through something and it's just the worst, it's the worst. It's unavoidable. You can't ignore struggle. You can like try to and think it's gonna go away, but it won't. Actually, funny anecdote, trying to ignore your own struggles and trying to ignore the difficult things that are going on in your life is like Noelle's daughter, Greta, playing hide and go seek when we were little. Because she'd like sit on the couch and put a blanket over her head and be like, you can't see me. And I'm like, well, you're like yelling out to me and also you're right there. So I can definitely see you. That's what that is. But this is the most important. Struggle's temporary. I actually really tried very hard to find a U word to keep it alliterative. And it was really hard. So temporary is what I went with. Struggle is temporary. It does not last. It will come again and again and again and again, but it never stays. So we're going to talk a little bit about comfort zones and how we can push ourselves beyond our comfort zones to actually leverage the struggles and the difficult life experiences that we're going through to make our creative work better and stronger and more relatable and more human. So there's a few different comfort zones that I've outlined here. We have ignore, which is no risk. We have acknowledge, which is low risk. We have confront, which is the hard work. And we have overcoming, which is the hard work. So ignoring is on the outside. That's where you're like, nah, just gonna not. Doesn't exist, it's fine, it's not something I'm gonna deal with. Acknowledging is low risk. Acknowledging is when you're like, okay, that's a thing, but it's just gonna stay a thing. I know it's there, but I'm not gonna really deal with it. Confronting's the hard stuff. That's where you're actually coming face to face with yourself or face to face with whatever it is that you wrote down on your piece of paper. And overcoming is the hard work. That's where Noelle said it beautifully wherever she is. Hi, Noelle. Noelle said it the other day or last night perfectly. Overcoming is where the joy is. That's where you're creating, that's where you're sharing, that's where you're distributing, that's where people are relating and connecting. You never get from ignore to overcome in one step. There's there's 4 steps, but there's like 50 steps in between where you're ignoring something and you're actually doing the work to overcome it. So what I want you to do is just think about what you wrote down on your piece of paper. Whatever struggle you're facing, whatever challenge is in front of you, think about maybe where you fall with that challenge on this bullseye. Are you ignoring it? Are you like, this is a thing that I've just been, well, first of all, actually, if you wrote it down, you're already acknowledging it, so that's great. But what can you be doing just to take one step? If you're in ignoring, what can you be doing to just acknowledge that there's something in your life that's challenging you that needs addressing? If you've already acknowledged it and you've written it down and you've claimed it and you've declared it, what can you do to confront it? Oftentimes, we stay and ignore because confronting is scary. Ignoring the thing and not facing it is actually way more work than just like taking a step beyond where we're at. Like, how many times have you been faced with a challenge and you realized you built up all this angst and this stress and this, like, these awful feelings, and then once you just did it, once you said it, once you got it over with, you were like, oh, God. Like, that's just one step. The important thing to remember is that we're all mad here. We often judge others most often when we are feeling unresolved and afraid. I find that when I'm looking at what someone else is doing and I'm like, ugh, it's usually like that's how I feel about myself. It's not how I feel about whatever they're doing. Whatever they're doing is probably awesome. But I'm feeling about myself. It helps to remember that we are all products of every amazing, terrible, shameful experience we've been through. We are all misfit toys, and we are enough just so. We're products of everything. Everything we've been through, every tragedy, every challenge, every awkward moment, awkward encounter, every bad date, every car accident, everything, all of it. We're all products of that. That's what makes us different, that's what makes us unique, and that's what makes our stories worth sharing. Because if you're feeling it, someone else is feeling it. And that's what's so beautiful about being a creative, is you have a built-in community of people that get you. You have a built-in community of people who not only share your experiences, but are waiting for you to tell them. Play in the mess. Like, playing is the best part of being creative. Think about being a kid. Like, if you're a creative, you get to be a little kid all the time. Well, not all the time, but when you put on your creative hat, you get to be a little kid. Because you get to approach your challenges kind of objectively. Like, maybe this isn't a thing that needs to be as difficult as I'm making it. Life is colored with complexity. It's messy, it's complicated. Don't be afraid to play in the mess. Life is one big brainstorm, and you have the power to alchemize your ideas into actions and your downfalls into rising. I actually was just saying this to someone before the show. Being creative is like being a magician, which is kind of cool because magicians are the best. You're literally creating things out of what looks like nothing, and you're putting it out in the world, and suddenly it's this big, beautiful thing. So if you can take your ideas and your downfalls and your life experiences and alchemize them into shareable works of art that other people will connect with, you're creating something that not only is going to help yourself, it's going to help other people. Celebrate your inner outcast. We go to a lot of crazy lengths to fit in. We don't want to say something because what if somebody else takes it the wrong way? We don't want to wear something because it's weird. We don't want to do something because it's out of our comfort zones, and what if I can't do it? But the things that challenge you and push you and make your life difficult are the things that make you different. Nobody on earth has your life experiences, your intel, or your perspective. So for better or worse, own them, leverage them, and even share them. This is my favorite part. I want to challenge all of you to revisit, it says the 3 things, because when I originally gave this presentation, it was 3 things, so you guys didn't do it wrong, I did. But I want to challenge every single one of you to revisit the 1 thing that you wrote down at the start of this talk. Incorporate your challenges into your creative work. Turn them into music, turn them into poetry, turn them into thoughtful conversations. Step outside of your comfort zone and turn them into shareable works of art. Someone asked me the last time I gave this talk, what is it that allows me to push publish on every piece? Like when I'm sitting there at my computer and I've written something, whether it's about heartbreak, or whether it's about death in the family, or whether it's about asking for a raise at work, or whether it's about sexism in advertising, whatever it is, whenever I'm sitting at my computer and I'm ready to push publish, like what is it that like allows me to push publish and get over my fears? And it's this idea that these are just life experiences. I'm not calling anybody out, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm doing the opposite. I'm literally saying, like, this is a scary, difficult thing that I went through. So you can go through it too, and you can get to the other side, and you can move beyond it. So stepping outside of your comfort zone and sharing your work while it seems on the surface extremely scary, it's actually extremely liberating, and I can't tell you the number of times complete strangers or like people from middle school that used to ignore me in the grocery store line when I saw them have emailed me and been like, I don't know if this is weird or creepy that I'm reaching out to you, but I read your piece, or I read your Instagram post, or I read your article on whatever website, or I saw your billboard or whatever, and it touched me. And it made me think that there's maybe a way that I can approach and confront my own challenges. So give yourself the opportunity to have those conversations with this community and with the greater creative community, because your people will have your back. And if you're spending all of your time worried about the other people, the people who will judge you and criticize you and make fun of you, those aren't your people anyway. Screw those people. They can't touch you, they don't even exist. Worry about the people who are waiting to receive you, because those are the people who are waiting for your work. And here's where you can find me if you want to keep chatting. Instagram, Twitter, other places with handles, at Carley Barton. And then my blog, The Renegade Rulebook, is therenegaderulebook.com. And I work at an amazing ad agency called GYK Antler, so you can also find me and some of my work there. That's it.